film you're about to see has no characters, it has no people. It is a film to describe to you and explain visually the effect of cymatic frequencies on texture, structure, water, oil. If you spare a little of your imagination as you watch this film as it runs, you will see many things that answer many questions. You will see living forms, living amoeba, almost animal-like creatures. You will see continents being formed, the earth itself coming into existence, explosions, eruptions, atomic explosions and bombs. You can see all this and watch it before your eyes, but everything owes its existence solely and completely to sound. Sound is the factor which holds it together. Sound is the basis of form and shape. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. We are told that this is how the worlds began and how creation took shape. If we put that into the modern idiom and say that into the great voids of space came a sound and matter took shape. Please watch carefully.
What we see here is the effect of vibration on a specific substance. We use sand and lycopodium. The sand forms the lines. We can also use different shapes of plate. Here we have a triangular plate with a crystal attached to its underside. We change to a higher note and see a rather more complicated figure. But now we can also observe moving waves. Here the sand is flowing in a current. When the wavelengths are short, these currents produce a rotary effect. Areas become defined in which the particles are actually rotating. In vibrating glycerin, we see continuous waves which form the queerest figures. And yet, the extraordinary things we see here are simply and solely the effect of vibration. A fluid, colored black, is dripped into a transparent fluid. Vibration now gives rise to curious eddy formations. Plastic substance is shaped into a ball by the wave trains of the vibrating membrane. The masses are jiggled round, but gradually proper spherical shapes are formed, created by nothing more than the vibratory process. Now, by changing the amplitude, that is, changing the volume of the tone, we can bring about a very interesting phenomenon. The tone is the same, but we introduce a burst, an amplitude burst, and every time we do so, it integrates the whole situation. All materials and substances and the various states of aggregation behave in characteristic ways under the effect of vibration, or we can say that their behavior is specific. Here is a pulp. Here again, round shapes are formed, and circulation is set in motion. There is a definite ripple effect caused by the wave trains in the vibrating membrane, a rich field of effects due to vibration. And, to end with, here, by way of contrast, is a sonorous figure, a static figure instead of a dynamic one, representing the opposite pole in the vast range of phenomena that make up the world of vibration.
Quantum physics has revealed what ancient masters knew. Matter does not exist. The concept of substance arose from the philosophy of Aristotle, and from that concept came science's conception of matter. The fact of the matter is that the substance of the universe is consciousness. Belief that the substance of the universe is matter leads to what I call a fear-greed dichotomy, as people in their quiet desperation attempt to accumulate as many material possessions and riches as possible. In fact, the substance of the universe is consciousness.
Light is a wave of electric and magnetic fields. Sound is a wave of air pressure. According to quantum mechanics, all the particles in the universe have the properties of waves, including all the particles that we ourselves are made from. Therefore, to understand light, sound, and the very nature of reality, it is necessary to first understand waves.
Noise campaigns aren't just designed for inducing stress, sleep deprivation, and targets. Science proves that noise campaigns are cleverly designed to attack the very underlying foundation of our nature as soul beings. It weaponizes natural laws in our universe, designed to cymatically assault the very core of our existence.
DNA is a three-dimensional molecule that is self-replicating. Each molecule is able to make an identical copy quickly and efficiently. The Lord has even programmed DNA to detect and correct replication errors. These sophisticated capabilities far exceed man's means.
God has created the DNA molecule in such a way that it is self-correcting. There are special proteins called enzymes that go up and down the DNA molecule looking for and making repairs on a minute-by-minute, second-by-second basis. God created us with a DNA code that actually has what we call editase or editorial type enzymes. Just as an editor reads a newspaper or a book looking for mistakes, so God has created special enzymes that go up and down our DNA molecule, repairing the mistakes in ways that are unbelievably complex.
Our DNA has information in it, and there is a whole field of scientific study called information science, which studies how information originates, how it's transmitted, and so on. And one of the laws of information science says that information never originates by itself in matter, never spontaneously comes about. Anytime we trace the copying of information back to its source, it always comes back to a mind. And since we have creative information in DNA, that tells me that DNA comes from intelligence. It's not something that could possibly come about through millions of years of mutations and natural selection.
And these 64 possibilities, it appears that only 20 of these codes are turned on right now for us, the 20 amino acids. There is a switch that turns off and turns on where those coding sites lie, and that the switch for that turning off and turning on is what we call emotion. And this is the first time that we've ever seen the patterns of emotion directly physically linked to human genetic material. Well, fear is a long, slow wave of emotion. So this wave of fear is a long, slow wave and touches relatively few sites on this DNA. So an individual living in fear is limited to the number of antennae that they have available to them. Whereas an individual living in the pattern of love, this is love in DNA. You can see it's a higher frequency, shorter wavelength. We have many more potential sites for coding along that genetic pattern. The information, this is amazing. This is the first time we've ever had a hard digital link between emotion and genetics.
Fear and love. All other emotions branch either directly or indirectly from these two emotions. Fear has a long and slow frequency vibration to it, while love has a very rapid and high frequency. To show that vibration is the very foundation of existence, Hans Jenny developed what is known as cymatics in the 1940s to show that when vibrations of sound are passed through a form of media, there is a set pattern that will follow. When the frequency increases, the media develops into a more complex pattern.
Let's ponder the profound ramifications of low vibrational, fear-based, hateful thoughts, emotions, and intention spewing from a whole gang of psychic vampires hell-bent on creating a ruckus of insane clamor to inflict harm upon you. It is more than a noise campaign. It is a heinous crime.
the most intriguing discoveries in modern science is the fact that there is nothing in this world that even approaches what might be called truly solid. We speak of solids, liquids, and gases, but these terms describe superficial rather than basic properties of matter. All matter, regardless of its state, is composed of invisible particles called atoms, which in turn are composed of other particles. The air we breathe, though invisible to us, is just as real as wood or metal, because it's made of the same fundamental particles. It is the arrangement of these particles and the forces that bind them together that give to a substance its special properties. If we bring a piece of steel close to a magnet, we say that the steel becomes magnetized. But what is it that actually happens? We place the steel inside a coil of wire connected to a high-gain amplifier, and then bring the magnet close to the bar of steel, we can hear something that suggests movement inside the steel. Listen. We think of a piece of steel as being solid, and according to our definition, it is a solid. But the popular concept of what makes a solid is certainly a false one. This piece of steel, and any so-called solid substance on this earth, is almost entirely empty space. If we could eliminate the empty space in this piece of steel, all that would remain would be a tiny bit of matter, so small as to be invisible even with a high-power microscope. This concept of almost unlimited empty space within matter is comparatively new, but it is the very cornerstone of our knowledge in this atomic age. Atoms are not solid. Instead, they are tiny solar systems composed of infinitely small particles revolving at tremendous speeds and bound together by enormous forces. And like our solar system, atoms are almost entirely empty space. For the moment, let's forget the forces within the atom. Thinking only of the particles and the empty space around them, science knows no reason why I couldn't take this so-called solid steel bottle and just throw it right on through that wall. Except this, we've tried it and it hasn't worked. If I were to attempt to run through that wall right now, all I'd get for my trouble would be a good-sized lump on the head. But that which would prevent my body passing through the wall would not be a collision of particles, but rather a collision of forces. The same forces that make an atom bomb. And if it were not for these forces, my body could go freely back and forth through that wall, just as though it were not there. It is within the realm of scientific possibility that there could be two worlds coexistent, occupying the same part of space at the same moment of time, each world just as real as the other, with its mountains, valleys, rivers, trees, and people. And that one world could pass freely through the other world, neither world being conscious of the existence of the other world, if you grant just one thing. Atomic forces within the material substance of these two worlds that are not mutually interactive. What do we mean by this? Let's see. Here are two pieces of steel. Their appearance is quite similar, but a magnet will reveal a basic internal difference between the two pieces. This one, of course, is picked up, but this one is unaffected. This piece of steel is non-magnetic, stainless steel. Of course, we all know that other metals, such as brass or aluminum, are not affected by the magnet. But a ring made of aluminum is something else. It can be suspended in air by the electromagnetic force of what is actually a transformer. The ring being in effect a one-turn shorted secondary. A smaller ring will react even more violently. Here is another ring. This one made of a material we say is non-conductive. And it is completely completely unaffected. Here is another example. Several thousand watts of power were involved in that spark. If we replace the spark gap with a copper coil, the same power now flows through the coil. It's invisible, has no effect on many substances, but it can generate a lot of heat. Wood, paper, things that we think of as being quite inflammable are not affected at all. However, a piece of steel wool bursts into flame instantly. Did you ever fry an egg on a cold stove? It's no trick at all if you have the right equipment. This is a cold hot plate, and because it's cold, you can make it out of wood, if you like. Just be sure that there's a coil of wire inside and that you connect that coil to a high voltage alternating current source. The rest is easy. As long as we're being different, we'll use motor oil instead of Crisco. The egg fries very quickly, but the stove remains perfectly cold. In fact, if you wish, just to keep it handy, you can fry your egg on the morning newspaper. With a gadget like this, you can get up in the morning, sit on the stove, read the morning newspaper, and fry the eggs in your lap. Another example of the fact that physical forces can be quite selective in their effect. All of the examples which we have cited thus far have been in the physical realm, and of course have been limited by that fact. We can, however, cite examples that transcend the purely physical and clearly demonstrate the reality of these two worlds.
I mean, this is pretty powerful stuff that we're going over. I mean, there's no anthropologist or biologist on the planet who can explain this one. How the sunflower evolved a bunch of spirals in it. It's seed pod design, and how those spirals exactly lead to a golden ratio, Fibonacci series numbers. Unbelievable. Okay, this is it. There's no question. I mean, we've all been lied to all through our undergraduate college degrees and our elementary schools and on our TVs just by them not discussing all this. I mean, you know how many examples I have here? There's so many, and they're all this powerful. Okay? And all this was hidden from us while we were in our schools learning about, what were we learning about? Plate tectonics theory. I mean, it's pretty sad case. And when it's so obviously everywhere in nature, it has to be a conspiracy in the satanic New World Order Illuminati system we live in. I guess they don't want you to know this stuff, because you might realize that this reality you live in is charged with Yahweh. The architect's fingerprint is absolutely everywhere, and it's in you. You are a piece of that fingerprint. And hey, you might realize that your consciousness is also, and that there's no joke in saying you're created in God's image, and you can therefore take part in the power and creation of the intelligent designer.
In city life, one of the things that causes us a lot of stress is sound, noise, from the cars, from the jackhammers fixing the roads, honking horns, shouting music from next door. Or in this case, you can hear there's building being done right next door. And the sound is harsh, it's threatening. Now, the brain knows it's not threatening, they're just some men cutting some tiles. But the reptilian mind, the primitive mind, says, no, this is life-threatening. If your cat were here, it would run, it would go hide under the couch. So even though our logical mind says everything is fine, the reptilian mind is saying, danger, danger, danger. So it's been proven now through science that excessive noise in cities causes fight or flight in the nervous system.
Oh, just an interesting fact, guys. Every time that I'm subjected to a noise campaign, I've noticed, for instance, that when I'm in deep meditation, that's when all hell breaks loose, right? You get everything that these crooks can use against you. They'll coordinate a fantastical, theatrical performance, just spewing out ruckus from any imaginable source available to them, whether it be banging on the walls, whether it be slamming doors, opening, closing windows, revving their engines up and down the street, turning on their engines, turning off their engines, etc. Aircraft coordinating obviously with that. And it seems to me, and again, this is based on experience here, that what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve here is to disrupt my deep meditative trance and take me out of that inner world of inner peace and tranquility and bring me back to the third dimension, this false reality known as the third dimension. And I think the reason why they do that, what the end game is, they're trying to prevent me from developing my supernatural abilities, telekinesis, psychic ability, clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairconscience, etc. Levitation, time travel, astral travel, remote viewing, so on and so forth. Now, all of us were born with either one or a few of these abilities that were given to us by the creator of the universe. And so with me, I've noticed that every time that I am in deep meditation, that's when they attack me, you know. And so the reason why they do this, they don't want me to reach that level of spiritual empowerment, because if I do, they're gonna have a big problem in their hands, because I'm a good person, you know, I desire the very best for all of us. I'm not a competitive person. I don't even think about outdoing others. I don't look down upon people, you know. I'm not egomaniacal, and yeah, I'm not like that. I'm not competitive at all. I don't care, you know. I'm on a whole different level, and I operate from a different cosmovision. I'm very unique, and because I'm different from the rest of the people who are affected by multi-generational programming, consider the fact that I'm outspoken and that I have no filters, and you know, I just mean well for everybody. Like, if I see you fucking up, I'm gonna try and correct it. I'm gonna try and intervene some way, somehow, to try to help you. And they're afraid. The people at the very top are afraid because they're gonna lose money. They're gonna lose their false image, because I'm gonna be exposing them for the crimes they're committed against humanity by simply telling people, hey, you're an amazing spiritual being. You're not this third dimensional physical crap that we've been so conditioned to think of ourselves of.
For years we followed him around Java on his healing rounds, pleading to be allowed to film him, but he always refused, saying his powers resulted from a type of meditation with an ancient tradition of secrecy. It was only when my brother Lorne was suffering from a serious eye infection that he finally allowed us to film him in 1987.
It was nothing like any acupuncture I'd ever had. I was getting really powerful electric shocks and couldn't control my movements at all.
In yang positive and negative, you know, and my positive from here and my negative from here, and we meet together, this can get like electricity.
And is this because you're special? You have a special sort of
body? Meditation every day.
It's meditation that does it?
Meditation every day.
He then took our newspaper outside and showed us how qi can also be used to set things on fire. When he heard we'd shown this footage in public, He was very upset and refused all our future efforts to contact him again. As the years passed, we sadly resigned ourselves to never seeing him again. Projecting chi from the palm of the hand can also be used to resist rifle pellets, he says. First, you learn to distinguish between yin and yang chi in your body. Then how to pool it in your navel chakra. Then how to project it, he says. And it's the proportionate mixture between yin and yang which accounts for different effects, like pulling or pushing objects or igniting them. Then he gets really strange. He says that mastering yin chi is the key to the spirit world.
Discussion regarding this feeling-based prayer, this lost mode of prayer, sometimes seems a little more than academic until we can actually apply it in our lives or see it applied in our lives. In the late 1990s, I had the opportunity to do precisely that. When I saw the footage documenting the healing of a life-threatening condition within the body of a living woman using precisely the kinds of techniques that we're speaking about right now. For me, it was this kind of information that took this lost modality of prayer out of the realm of academics and into something that was very real that we can apply in our lives. I had the opportunity during that time to see some video footage of the healing of a 3-inch diameter bladder cancer inside the body of a woman who, by Western medical standards, had been diagnosed inoperable. She had gone, as a last resort, to a medicineless hospital in Beijing, China. It was in this medicineless hospital where they began simply by addressing the life-affirming ways that she could change how she was living her life. They taught her life-affirming ways to breathe and life-affirming ways to nourish her body, gentle movements to stimulate the energy centers in her body. And as she was doing these and strengthening her body, at one point it made sense to undergo a process. Now I'd like to share this, I'd like to describe it to you as a very potent example of how the feeling world inside of our bodies has a direct effect, in this case a very graphic effect, on the world beyond our bodies. So in the video documentation, the film shows a woman lying on in a hospital room. She's fully awake, she's fully conscious, she believes in the process that's about to happen. Before her, there is an ultrasound technician who is running an ultrasound wand over her lower abdomen that we can see on a split-screen television. And on the left-hand side of the screen, they do a snapshot, a freeze frame of an instant in time for reference, so we can see what her condition looked like in that instant in time. On the right-hand side of the screen, we are able to watch real time as 3 practitioners stand behind her, working with the energy in her body and with the feelings in their bodies. And what they do is they began to chant a word that to them they've agreed upon, that reinforces the feeling within them that she's already healed. The chant essentially says, already healed, already done. And as they begin to have this feeling and to say these words among themselves, on the computer screen, on the television screen, we can watch in real time this cancerous tumor as it disappears in less than 3 minutes real time. It's not like time-lapse on a documentary where you see a rose unfold in 30 seconds in something that normally takes days. This literally happens in less than 3 minutes. Her body responded to the feelings of the practitioners who were trained to have the kinds of feelings that they were having. And all they were feeling was the feeling of what it feels like to be in the presence of a woman who is already healed, fully enabled, fully capacitated. They were not seeing her as a woman who was sick, and they weren't saying, bad cancer, you've got to go away.
Are you ready for the blindfold reading?
Yes.
Watch as she reads pieces of paper handed to her by random observers, blindfolded.
Director of successful and respected American business.
She plays with toys, letting an audience member mix one set before matching up the colors as though her eyes were wide open.
First the green, then the orange, then the blue, then the blue, then the yellow, then the like a donut.
Wonderful.
Even beating this young onlooker at a game of tic-tac-toe.
X. I won.
Yay!
So, Yogamata, I saw what you were doing in there. It's really amazing. But some people at home watching this video might think you're playing a trick on us. Are you playing a trick?
No. If they think I'm cheating, I have ridden a bicycle in blindfold. And it's not a trick. It's just a mystical power they can learn. Anybody can learn.
So when you say you're seeing from your third eye, what exactly does it look like?
It looks like everything is just coming like an image. Just pops up and goes. Sometimes when I open my eyes and see all looking around, like how I see you, I see many other stuff. Sometimes an image, sometimes like how I look around, like with my normal two eyes.
And can you turn it on and off, or do you always see?
I can turn it on and off whenever I want. It's like my decision. I want to do it, and it's my decision. I do not want to do it. And sometimes, if I'm in a bad mood, if I try doing blindfold, it does not come totally.
Oh, so you have to be
Like
in a good state of mind.
Yeah. And sometimes, if I'm in a bad mood, if I try doing blindfold, it does not come totally.
Oh, so you have to be
Like
in a good state of mind.
Yeah.
It doesn't come totally. As you can see, even those who have fully developed their supernatural abilities given to us by the creator of the universe, even they can be affected, negatively impacted, and abilities thwarted by low vibrational frequencies emanating from negative emotions or the thoughts and emotions and negative intentions of others. And so this is what the noise campaign, guys, and this whole targeting individual thing is all about. They're trying to prevent you from breaking out of this spiritual matrix, this spiritual prison, this third dimensional holographic false reality, this Truman Show.
And sometimes, if I'm in a bad mood, if I try doing blindfold, it does not come totally.
Oh, so you have to be
Like
in a good state of mind.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what?
What?
I have a couple of pieces of paper in my pocket. Can you read them for me?
Yeah.
I did these earlier. So, here's one. In fact, why don't you open it?
Know thyself, Swamiji.
Wow. That's exactly what it says.
Is that you have power of levitation. And as a magician, this is something that I'm fascinated with.
Your magic is fantastic, but we're not the same with these meditations.
Yes, I understand. I know you don't want to teach me how to do it or tell me any of your what you do, but maybe I could just witness it.
You come from very far away. You show me your scale. I don't know what happened, but I will try one time.
Okay, great.
I need you back. If you still close me, then my energy doesn't know. Yes.
Okay.
I need you back. If you still close me, then my energy doesn't know. I need you back. If you still close me, then my energy doesn't know.
I need you to move back, he says, because if you stay close to me, my energy does not work. And so you see, guys, the purpose of targeting individuals is solely to spiritually oppress them or to keep them from obtaining an understanding of their true nature as spiritual soul beings. Considering the fact that these gang stalkers are being paid to stalk us and mob us, it's all for narcopathic feasting off of our energy. because we are powerful beings. Are you starting to see the picture now?
Need you back. If it still follows me, then my energy doesn't know.
Right now he's saying his mantra. It's the real deal. There's no wires. I don't see anything. This is crazy.
It is not a coincidence that every time that I am meditating, I get hit with a massive noise campaign. Every time that I am critically thinking, brainstorming, I get hit with a strategic noise campaign designed to disrupt my thought processes. This is a mind control psychological warfare technique known as thought stopping.
Your awareness is one of the most powerful spiritual powers that you have. Learn how to use it wisely, and the dark magicians will not be able to control you. To learn how to use power of your awareness wisely.
What you do is what the whole universe is doing at the place you call here and now. You are something the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is something that the whole ocean is doing.
Mr. Emoto's work provides factual evidence that human vibrational energy, thoughts, words, ideas, and music affect the molecular structure of water. Please remember that water comprises over 70% of a mature human body and covers the same amount on our planet. Water is the very source of all
life. I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Structure of water and what affects it. Now, water is the most receptive of the four elements. Mr. Emoto thought perhaps it would respond to non-physical events. So he set up a series of studies, applied mental stimuli, and photographed it with a microscope.
For one sample of water, we drop about 0.5 cc's onto each 50 petri dishes. Then we take those 50 petri dishes and freeze them in a freezer at minus 25 degrees Celsius for about 3 hours. We take those frozen samples into a refrigerator that is set at minus 5 degrees Celsius, where a microscope with a camera is set up. There we take photographs of each of the 50 water drops individually. We first take photographs of water that we did not put any information in. Then we take the water with information and do the same procedure just described. those before and after photographs and compare the differences. When we projected the feeling of love and thanks to water, it made the most beautiful crystal. At times like this, I think water is at peace.
This first picture is a picture of water from the Fujiwara Dam. And this picture is the same water after receiving a blessing from a Zen Buddhist monk. Now, in this next series of pictures, Mr. Emoto printed out words, taped them to bottles of distilled water, and left them out overnight. This first photograph is a picture of the pure distilled water, just the essence of itself. These subsequent photographs, as you can see, are each different. This is the chi of love. And we move along here to thank you. And you can see where he taped that to this bottle here. But if you read Japanese, you already knew that. Now, Mr. Emoto speaks of the thought or intent being the driving force in all of this. The science of how that actually affects the molecules is unknown, except to the water molecules, of course. And it's really fascinating when you keep in mind that 90% of our bodies are water.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? If thoughts can do that to water, imagine what our thoughts can do to us.
To what extent is water capable of picking up information? What does it perceive? And how does it remember it over time?
The Aerospace Institute in Stuttgart has discovered a relatively simple way of making the structure of a drop of water visible. The researchers have had their efforts rewarded by insights into a very beautiful world. Each drop has a face of its own, unmistakable and unique. Why are the individual drops so different from one another? We got a lot of people to come to a lecture hall here at the Institute, gave them all the same water, had them make drops at exactly the same time, collected all the drops, and then discovered that each individual produced different images from the same water. And here you can see the results. Here on the right you can see that the images of the individual students are different, but those made by a given student are all quite similar. This is the work of the first experimenter, this one here from the second, this from the third, and this from the fourth. Individually they can quite easily be reproduced, but you would never have thought that they were all from the same water, because when you compare the images from the different people, you see some big differences. Then we undertook experiments to find out whether things changed when we put something into the water. A real flower was placed in the water. A while later we took a drop of water, and here you can see one of the pictures. And you can see it in this picture. It's the typical image you get when you put a flower into water. You could recognize the flower in every single drop in this glass, of course. That can be reproduced and has significance. And if you were to put a different flower in here, for example, a Sweet William flower, then all the drops of this water would look like Sweet William. The statement that water has a memory practically changes our whole way of looking at the world, of course. Let's travel down the Rhine in the figurative sense. The water is flowing down the Rhine, picking up information everywhere it goes. So the water has more information at the mouth of the Rhine than it had at the source. And the Dutch, living at the mouth, when they drink that water, they're also drinking all that information. Thus, the world's oceans would no longer be something that separates us, but instead a giant storehouse of information, and the rain would perhaps be a data medium carrying information to the world.
We decided to repeat a popular experiment that has been done by many others online. And while science has failed to recognize the importance, many independent thinkers have now pondered with first-hand evidence what the impact of our feelings could really be. One of science's least measured phenomena may be one of the most important: the power and energy of emotions, moods, attitudes, speech, and behavior.
Well, that's a rather simplified suggestion of a complex mental process, but you get the idea. Cause, effect, patterns of emotional response.
The results were startling, not so much the conclusion in itself, but to experience it firsthand. What follows is the impact of our actual words. Perhaps our intentions matter.
Do you ever think about the things that you say, not just to other people, but yourself? What effect, if any, those things actually really do have? I don't just mean the superficial effects or the emotional reactions to the words that you say, but is there something deeper, a more tangible, physical
Since
effect?
rice absorbs water when you cook it, you can basically conduct the same research Dr. Masaru did. I approached the experiment by purchasing 3 brand new glass containers. I cooked some rice and added the exact same amount of rice in each container. And every day for about 2 months, I'd spend 60 seconds per container telling them either negative or positive things. The container marked love. I'd say nice things such as, "You're awesome," and "I love you." And to the container marked hate, I'd say horrible things such as, "You don't deserve to live," and "You make me sick," and "Go and kill yourself." And the container marked ignore, I do just that. This experiment, it just proves to me that our thoughts is not just an interior force, but also an exterior force, which means that our thoughts gives out some kind of energy, vibrations when we think about something, and it goes outwards. Now, you might think that there's room for coincidence, but this works every time. If you want to try it yourself and narrow down your odds, try using 25 containers or even 50 containers. This works, and it shows that our thoughts literally shapes our life. It all starts in your mind. What you think and feel, you will become. If you think in positive terms, your life will be positive in every aspect of life. I guarantee it.
Almost from a distance, looks like just normal cooked rice. You wouldn't be able to tell that this has been sitting in this jar for 2 months now. And it's way better than this right here. Looks like a mutated nightmare out of Silent Hill. It's really, really disgusting. Some of this is actually turning orange and red. It looks like it's rusting in the jar. In the front right here, you have this nasty green mold pile that's actually growing fur. There's all kinds of condensation going down the sides of the jar. I mean, it looks really disgusting. There's like a bright orange piece of rice. I didn't even know rice could turn bright orange, but it did. This is really disgusting. That is nasty. It's nasty from super far away, and visually you can see right away there's a huge difference between this jar and this jar. But what I think is actually the most interesting for me was the ignored rice, which also has a ton of condensation in it. In the back, you have what used to be gray rice that's starting to turn black. There's a big black mold spot in the middle underneath here, and the entire thing is covered in what looks like snow, like a big mound of white mold. And there's also a ton of condensation in it as well. And so none of this rice looks the same at all, even remotely. This is rice, this is organic rice that was cooked with reverse osmosis water in the same batch, and then was placed into 3 of the same type of jar that had been sterilized with boiling water in the same exact manner at the same time, placed in the same spot on the counter.
That is to say, to be able to drift like a cloud and flow like water. Seeing that all life is a magnificent illusion, a playing of energy, and there is absolutely nothing fundamentally to be afraid of. Fundamentally. You will be afraid on the surface. You will be afraid of putting your hand in the fire. You will be afraid of getting sick. But you will not be afraid of fear. Fear will pass over your mind like a black cloud will be reflected in the mirror.
Now, what we've seen up until now are single signals, single frequencies projected into matter. And what you're seeing here now are interference patterns of 2 or more frequencies resulting in a pulse. The pulse of the human heart, the pulse that drives the blood through the veins in your bodies. What is your heart responding to? Where does that pulse come from?
I can only call it, you go down into sound. And you listen to that vibration, and you go into it and into it and into it, and you suddenly realize that that vibration that you're listening to, or singing, is what there is. That's the energy of the cosmos. That's what's going on. And everything that's going on is a kind of a pulsation of energy, which in Buddhism is called suchness.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.